So our first question will go to Dr. Kankam. If you can give us an overview on hypertension, then what we have to look out for when it comes to the diastolic and systolic, or things that we have to look at our age, getting to 40. Some of us are 40, but what we have to look for, the signs that we have to look for to identify whether we are either hypertensive or hypo. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be talking more about hypertension today. Maybe hypo will come in as the questions come by. But it's very appropriate that at this time we take as a topic to discuss hypertension. And you were saying that, or you were asking what we should be looking out for. The thing about it is most of the hypertensions, apart from going to the hospital and getting to know, or maybe, most people, let me use the Ghana setting. When you go to the hospital, everybody that gets to the hospital gets checked for, you get your blood pressure checked. Most people will not know they are hypertensive until they have gone to a hospital like that, because they won't give you any symptoms, of course. And that's why hypertension is currently one of the leading causes of deaths, even with our age groups. It used to be with the elderly, people above 60, but now we notice that people from 30s, even in the 20s, are getting hypertensions that hitherto were for people with who had advanced in age from 60. It's very common now around. I think over a period now, we've moved from it being like 2% prevalent to about 25%. It's even estimated that over 1 billion people in the world are living with hypertension. I think to end on this part, of course, although most of them may be asymptomatic without signs or symptoms, or without symptoms, there are still symptoms that you could see that could suggest that you are hypertensive or you are becoming hypertensive. And some of the common ones include headaches, dizziness, palpitations. When you have palpitations, basically normally when you are there as a human being or as a man, woman, you are not supposed to feel your heart beating. So if you start to feel your heart beating even at rest, like the typical example is when you run, the way your heart beats. This time at rest, you feel your heart beating as if you're running. That's palpitation. And then, of course, dizziness is a very common thing. Headaches. There are people who are presented with sleeplessness. In the night, they just cannot sleep and all that. So I think for now, John, I don't know if that is okay for. I actually don't know how we'll be taking the presentation. I can just go on.
Yeah, go on. I'll let you know when we have to take, unless probably that is what you have.
Yeah, but for definition, mostly you'll be diagnosed of hypertension after you've had your blood pressure checked, and you clearly mentioned the systolic and diastolic BP. So when you go to the hospital and you get your BP checked, of course they give you a figure that's like it has a top value and a lower value. The top value is your systolic blood pressure, which is your blood pressure when your heart is contracting or your heart is pumping, and then the diastolic pressure is when your heart is relaxed. It's supposed to be filling. When it's relaxed, the blood pressure, that's the lower value. So assuming you go to the hospital and they say your blood pressure is 120/80, the 120 at the top is the systolic and the 80 is the diastolic. And for hypertension, everything starts from a systolic blood pressure of more than 140 and the diastolic pressure of more than 90. Of course, there are people who are naturally hypotensive. So when there's an increase, even though they haven't gotten to 140, assuming you have a normal blood pressure daily of maybe 90, a 130 might be signifying or might be indicative of, or 130 systolic blood pressure might be indicative of some form of hypertension. Of course, in general, would define any BP that's getting closer to 140, maybe 120 to 139 systolic as pre-hypertension, and then from 80 to 89, just before you get to 90, as of diastolic, also as pre-hypertension. Then there are two stages. There's the stage 1 hypertension where your systolic BP is between 140 and 159, and then your diastolic will be between 90 and 99. Then the stage 2 is when your systolic blood pressure is above 160 and your diastolic is above 100. Okay, then.
Okay, all right. Doc, thank you. Thank you. Sorry for cutting you. I think I would like to bring in Dr. Jacqueline to tell us what is it is, and then the overview of it, please.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a brief overview on diabetes mellitus. So the normal thing the normal way our body usually works is that when we eat food, our food goes through a metabolic process. What that means is it breaks down into what the body needs. So when there's an organ in our body called the pancreas, and it secretes certain things that helps with digestion. One of the things that it secretes is a hormone called insulin, and that's secreted from the beta cells of the pancreas. Now, when insulin is secreted, sorry, I'm going to say a bit of science so that you can get what it looks like, and then you can advise yourselves. So when insulin is secreted, it acts on three things: on the liver, on the skeletal muscles, and on the fat tissue or the adipose tissue. So that's how it normally works. And then it goes through a series of processes and breaks down the food that we've eaten into the things that our body needs so that we can be healthy. But in diabetes, what happens is either the pancreas is not secreting insulin at all, or that it's secreting the insulin, but the insulin is unable to act the way it should. So in cases where the pancreas is not secreting insulin at all, we classify that type of diabetes as type 1 diabetes. In that case, usually the beta cells in the pancreas has been destroyed. The culprit is usually an autoimmune disorder of a sort, which that's a constitution of some diseases that is like the body fighting itself, and then it destroys the beta cells of the pancreas. So with those people, they need insulin to be given them in order for the glucose to be broken down further. But in type 2 diabetes, they are the category of people who have the insulin being produced, but it's probably not acting properly on the cells, the receptor cells, on the three different things. That's the liver, the adipose tissue, and the skeletal muscles. So with these people, there's decreased action of the insulin. And what happens is when we eat, especially carbohydrates, it turns into glucose, or in layman's terms, sugar in the blood. So when the glucose is in the blood, it triggers the pancreas to release insulin, so that insulin will remove the glucose from the blood to the various parts of the body that needs the glucose. Now, when there's a problem with insulin acting on the receptors, what happens is the sugars in the blood remain very high. And when it remains very high, one thing that's going to happen is it's going to go towards the kidney. And when it goes towards the kidney, it's going to cause the kidney to secrete it as glucose urea. That means sugar in the urine. And when that happens, it promotes what we call osmotic diuresis. And that will trigger the person wanting to pee a lot or to urinate a lot. So when they're passing a lot of urine, we call that polyuria. And that's one classic symptom of diabetes. So they're passing a lot of urine, that's one symptom. The other thing that happens when a lot of urine is being passed is the people tend to become dehydrated. When they become dehydrated significantly, they can end up, sorry, when they become dehydrated, it triggers the brain to feel like it needs more water. So the person becomes thirsty and then they start to drink a lot of water. And that's another symptom that we call polydipsia. So the other thing that also will be happening is when the glucosuria is being produced, it causes electrolyte imbalance. So when the kidney is releasing a lot of the glucose through the urine, there's electrolyte imbalance that happens. And if that state continues for a while, the person can end up in a state called hyposmotic state. And that's an emergency. That's a topic for a different day. So the other thing too is when there's excessive insulin being released, but it's not being able to act to remove the blood from the sugar from the blood. What happens is the pancreas will think that the organs will be crying out for the breakdown products of the glucose as though the person hasn't eaten because all the glucose is in the blood. So when that happens, the pancreas releases more insulin. And when the pancreas releases more insulin, the person has excessive insulin. It's not really acting the way it should to remove the glucose from the blood. So at the end of the day, it triggers this thing from the organs are crying, I need food, because the carbohydrate should have broken down into energy for the organs to function properly. So the brain will then think you've not eaten. So the brain, it triggers a desire for hunger. So the people who have diabetes tend to want to eat a lot. And that's what we call polyphagia. That's another symptom of diabetes. So I've mentioned 3 symptoms. That's polydipsia, polyuria, polyphagia. Now, the other thing too that tends to happen is if the significant loss of urine and significant dehydration, that can, if in effect, cause renal damage or kidney failure, because the kidney is kind of, it causes electrolyte imbalance, and then the kidney's function goes out of, what it should be. So in the end, it can cause the kidney to run down. And in diabetes, another thing that can happen over a long period of time is if the insulin is being produced by the pancreas, after a very long time, the beta cells of the pancreas can atrophy. They can just die because they are like producing extra insulin more than they should, because insulin is not acting the way it should. And when that happens, the type 2 diabetic who's probably had diabetes for a long time, whose insulin is not acting the way it should for a long time, now has lack of production of insulin, and then this person would need to rely on insulin. So in short, diabetes is the inability for the insulin to adequately act the way it should, or the lack of production of insulin. So that causes high sugar levels or hyperglycemia. That's high sugar levels in the blood or hyperglycemia. So a state of hyperglycemia is what we will define as diabetes. I don't know if you want to hear figures, because I don't know if it means anything to you, but you might want to remember 7-Eleven, as in if you did if one did their fasting sugar and it was above 7 on one occasion with these symptoms that I've said, the polydipsia, polyuria, polyphagia, then they are diabetic. If they did a test with these symptoms, one reading with the symptoms or 2 readings without the symptoms, show that they are most likely diabetic. Or if they did a random sugar, which is a sugar test done 2 hours 2 hours after meals, that reads 11 and above. That also, if they do that twice, or they do it, if they have a reading of 11 and above with the symptoms, then they are diabetic. And one key thing I want to mention is the risk factors. So for our ages, well, not just our ages, in recent times, we are seeing diabetes being diabetes type 2. Initially, we used to see it in people over 60 years old. Now we are seeing it in younger people as young as 15, 12 years old. And some of the risk factors are: one, obesity. So if your waistline is more than 31 inches, 30 inches, 31 inches, you are obese. If your, sorry, not necessarily obese. If your waistline is more than 30 inches, you have central obesity, so you are at risk. If your BMI is greater than 35, you are at risk. If you have genetic factors such as autoimmune disorders that can cause destruction of pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas, you are at risk. If you have family history, you know your parents or your siblings or somebody related to you. So parents, siblings, maybe a cousin, but usually parents, siblings is what we look at. If you know they have diabetes, then you are at risk. If you have a sedentary lifestyle, that is, you do not exercise. And by exercise, I don't mean when we tell ourselves we're exercising, but we actually aren't exercising. So if you're someone who sits down a lot at work and you are not burning fats, you are at risk. Also, our diets is a big contribution to whether or not we put ourselves at risk. So for diets, I'm going to just mention a few things. So it's advisable that if your diet is high in sugary foods and fizzy drinks, then you're putting yourself at risk, like Coca-Colas and Fantas and all those sweet drinks. If your diet is also low in vegetables, is high in fats or saturated fats, like all these oil foods and fried yam and fried all that, fried chicken, then you're at risk. And if your diet, yes.
Let me cut in, sorry. Most of these factors are same as what happens in hypertension, so that I don't have to repeat them. So guys, when you are listening, it's both ways.
Yeah.
All the predisposing factors in diabetes are also in hypertension, so I don't have to repeat them when I'm back. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm taking my time with the diet because I think that's something we can actually take charge of and do something about. Or if we are culprits and we are eating all these wrong foods, then we know that moving forward, what we will advise might be something you need to take up. So for instance, if your diet is not high in fiber, and fiber foods would include beans, yes, beans, and like brown rice rather than white rice, or taking oats instead of the smooth porridges and stuff. But smooth porridge is okay in the right quantity. If your diet doesn't have vegetables, and I'm talking about green leafy vegetables, onion, tomatoes, cabbage, lettuce, broccoli, if you don't eat a lot of those things in the right proportions constantly, then you are at risk. And if you're using a lot of oil in your foods, or you're eating a lot of fried foods, fried buffaloes, fried yam, fried plantain, fried chicken, fried meat, fried fish, fried everything, you are at risk. If you're not eating enough fruits, you are at risk. And if you're caught up in eating a lot of sugary stuff, like I said, the processed foods with a lot of sugar, you are at risk. If another thing we advise is carbohydrates is necessary in our diet because it helps us produce energy, and we need the energy to be able to function. Your organs need the energy. However, if you're eating excessive carbohydrates, you are at risk. So for instance, if you're eating a bowl of 1 cd, you're supposed to eat just half if you're a 70 kg man or a 60 kg woman. So if you're eating more than half bowl kenkey, yes, you're at risk. If you're if you're eating more than a slice of yam, so for instance, when you cut the yam into this size and you have the whole circumference, that alone is 1 slice. You shouldn't eat more than that, because yam and the starchy foods tend to be high in glycemic index. So yam, cassava, potatoes, they have a higher glycemic index. The lower glycemic index foods would include things like the brown rice. So for instance, if you're eating a high glycemic food, I would advise you cut the portions down and rather increase the vegetables and the protein. And then we advise to cut down all fizzy drinks, all sweet stuff, and then reduce your fat intake. Also, don't get caught up on the fad diets made for diabetics. So as much as possible, would encourage that you don't take in the sugar reduced yogurts or fizzy drinks that says Coke Zero and etc. As much as possible, if you are cutting it out, cut it out. Try not to go for the reduced sugar foods, rather cut them out if you can, or eat the actual things, but in the right proportions. And a word of caution that I would say as my summary is the reason why this education becomes very necessary is that if we don't catch the diabetes early, it will cause end organ damage. What that means is your organs will begin to fail. So like I described, if the process of hyperglycemia is happening in somebody, like they have high blood sugar levels, and they are not doing anything about it, it tends to go to the kidneys. The kidneys cause a lot of secretion of urine. A lot of urine secretion causes dehydration. Then it backtracks and causes the kidney to fail. Or, for instance, if you leave the hyperglycemic state of a person going on for too long, the blood vessels begin to weaken, and then it encourages the formation of plaques and then thrombosis. So, plaques and then eventually clots form. Thrombosis is just the clots of the blood that form. And that can throw clots into the heart, clots into the brain, and cause heart attack or myocardial infarction, or cause strokes or cerebrovascular accidents. So the main take home is watch your diet, note your risk factors, and also for our ages, I would advise that from the age of 30 upwards, get checked yearly. Go to your doctor, let your doctor order all the labs, do your yearly screens. I would advise that because that's the only way people usually catch these things early. So that's my summary. I hope I broke it down well enough without using.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
You touched on every aspect of the diabetes issue we wanted to discuss. However, guys are not happy with some of the things that you said, and they want to put you on. We love Wachi, but this is my personal question. This is my personal question before anyone could chip in. All my life, I know polydipsia as a sickness, that people have the desire to drink water and then even get drunk on it. I know people who get drunk by just taking in water. Until today that I know you educated me on the symptoms that leads to polydipsia. You talked about rice. I don't know if you know of basmati rice. Will you recommend basmati rice as a replacement for all this fancy long grain perfume rice in the market? Will you recommend basmati?
My favorite rice.
I would recommend brown rice. So if it comes to rice, my recommendation would be brown rice, the rice that has the actual roughage on it, because it's high. The brown rice is not dehusked, so it contains high fiber, and it helps with a quicker metabolic process. Whereas the refined rice, whether basmati or perfumed or not, is not compared to the brown rice. The refined rice would have a higher glycemic index. And also the white rice in general contains starch. That's something we should know. But like I said earlier on, we need carbohydrates for energy. Your brain needs carbohydrates your organs need carbohydrates. So you can't cut out carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates, but you need to take it in the right quantities. So whether it's white rice or it's brown rice, you need to know that first of all, if you're taking that, you need to be aware that it's got a certain glycemic index, and you can't take more than a ladle of the rice unless you are active. If you're exercising, it's a different thing. For instance, for women, if you're exercising 3 times a week, doing cardio workouts 30 minutes 3 times a week and burning fats. If you're a man and you're doing 5 times a week, 30 minutes cardio workout and burning fats, then your recommendation will obviously be different. But most of us have a sedentary lifestyle. So I recommend 1 ladle.
How about those who have been okay? So,
John, I read messages
Apostle,
here.
we haven't invited you. Okay, I'm reading the message. Another question from Ayala, which I don't know if I should ask. He is asking if we cannot do the cardio and all the gym work. Do you say as married men they should be doing more of that than going to
more
the
of what?
gym?
More of what?
More of that.
Please, my mom is here.
That's a messages from the chat. No WhatsApp.
Sorry, can you please be...
more of sex?
Well, sex does burn fats, but not that much. And usually sex tends to make you hungry afterwards because it's a high burnout going on there. So right after sex, a lot of people tend to be hungry. So what they tend to do is eat a lot, which doesn't balance it out well. So no, I'll still advise the cardio workouts. You need to time yourself. Sex might not go on for 30 minutes. And the burning, the part of sex that actually causes one to burn fat, the orgasmic portion doesn't go on for 30 minutes. So that won't equivalent to your cardio workouts, the recommended cardio workouts.
Okay, so the next issue we would like you to address is age, race, and
John,
sex.
read the messages. Read the message from the chat.
By the way, I want to know what is the protocol for asking questions. Do we have to type our questions, or is an open? I wasn't here in the beginning.
We want her to cover the topic, and then after questions will come in.
Because we also don't have time, so you need to know that it's an hour and a half, and we don't have time. So
okay. Get away. Auntie August, please forgive us. Please, let's go back to the topic. We are blacks, and we are most eating starchy food, doing hard work, doing a lot of, up here, down here. When it comes to diabetes and hypertension, sex, race, and age. Can you please touch on that, please?
Dr. Kankam, do you want
to? To Dr. Kankam or...
Oh, okay.
I think previously these conditions were more with respect to race. They were more with the whites, sort of. But you see, with modernization, then sedentary lifestyles and all that come up, because those days when you mention the black man or a black woman, you're thinking going to the farm, carrying heavy stuff, missing job and all that. But now we are sitting more in the offices. So yeah, the prevalence is going higher in blacks now. And the other thing is that it's more common in the urban areas than it will be in the rural areas. The other thing, I think that you asked about age. Yeah, it's commoner with advanced age. So you are more likely to get hypertension and diabetes whilst you are aging. Then with sex, I think it's commoner in females, especially with a family history. at a higher risk of getting, especially both hypertension and diabetes. So if your mom is hypertensive or your mom is diabetic, you are really at a very high risk of getting hypertension. But then these days, there's no, the clear-cut definition isn't there like this. We are losing that clear-cut definition now with regards to the dominance. That's as based on lifestyles and all that, you'll be getting it, even though you are not highly like predisposed or anything like that because of lifestyle. So yeah, that's with the groups. So with age, the advanced age, you are at a higher risk of getting hypertension and diabetes. One thing that I would want to put across before any other questions will come is the consequences, especially of hypertension. Both conditions are they are interrelated, because once you get hypertension, the likelihood that you get diabetes is high, and once you get diabetes, the likelihood that you get hypertension is very high. There's one part of the consequences of hypertension that I know that boys would be very interested in is the sexual dysfunction. Or when you get diabetes or when you get hypertension, your sexual drive goes down, even your activity will go down. And the part about it that's even more disturbing is that the drugs that are used to manage hypertension and diabetes will also give you a low, or it can cause you to have sexual dysfunction. So, in as much as we are like, when we are presenting these topics today, we try to advise ourselves now that we don't have the condition. The others are obviously the others are obviously stroke, heart attack, heart failure, and you lose vision, you get kidney failure, kidney disease, and all that from both, from hypertension and diabetes, basically. Thank you.
I want to add to what Dr. Sekankam said. So when someone's diagnosed with diabetes, they are at a high risk of getting hypertension, a very high risk. And what that means is the figures we start to diagnose hypertension in them reduces. So whereas someone who just has hypertension will have to have a very high blood pressure, as high as like above 180, 90, before we see them having a stroke. In diabetes, they can have a blood pressure of about 140, perhaps 90, and we still see them having strokes. So reason is that like I said before, hyperglycemic states cause distraction to blood vessels. And one of the signs, like Dr. Sekankam rightly said, is erectile dysfunction seen in men. And what we usually say is, once you see erectile dysfunction, it's like the red flag or the warning sign of a cardiovascular disease. Because what tends to happen is the penile shaft the penis also contains blood vessels. And these blood vessels can also get destroyed as other blood vessels in the body. So already men above 40 start to experience a low libido. So coupled with bad lifestyle and the possibility of diabetes setting in, that can be a double-edged sword, if you get what I mean. So it's best to start getting really conscious about it now, so that when you're in your 40s and 50s, you'll be enjoying yourself.
Thank you.
Right. Apostle, wait. You met people. Others want to ask questions. We have ladies on the platform. Let me and your guys please. Darren.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Thank you very much, Dr. Kankam and Dr. Jacqueline Ezan. I would like to know, one, if honey is good, because some of us, we say we are no more taking sugar. So now we started with the honey stuff, right? Whether it works. Also, we don't want to drink all these fizzy drinks. So now we want to drink all this natural juice, like orange juice, pineapple juice, made at home. The sugars in this fruit, do they cause, or do they make diabetes, how do you call it? Do they cause diabetes, or if you have diabetes already, or if you're trying to avoid it, do you still eat a lot of fruit, banana, oranges, pineapple in their raw state, even though they're not processed, or squeeze them and then eat them? So honey and then fruit. Can you tell me whether they have any relationship with diabetes?
Okay, thank you for your question. That's a very, very good question. So with people who are already diagnosed with diabetes, who have good glycemic control, what that means is the person is diagnosed, the person is on medication, the person's sugar levels are well controlled. We encourage them to eat natural fruits. It's okay for them to eat it in moderation. So we wouldn't expect you to eat like 5 oranges. Would rather have you eat 1 orange and not every day. So it's still with caution. So the person must have good glycemic control. If the person doesn't have good glycemic control, it's a no-no. For someone without diabetes who is pre-diabetic, they can still take their natural fruits with regulation. So there are other fruits that do not contain sugars. You can take more of the fruits that do not contain sugars, like melon, like pawpaw, rather than the oranges. If you have to take an orange, 1 orange in maybe 5 days is fine. It won't do too much to the sugar levels. But if someone has poor glycemic control, it's a no-no. In terms of honey, honey still contains, so at the end of the day, honey is still going to break down into glucose in your blood. So it's all about glycemic control. Sometimes it becomes difficult when you tell the diabetic, don't eat this, don't eat that, and it can lead them to depression. So we are conscious of that fact. The main thing is to get a good glycemic control for the patients. And the main thing too is to get a good glycemic control for someone who's not diabetic. So good glycemic control for patients on medications, good glycemic control for someone who's not diabetic. So if you do not know your sugar levels and you just feel like cutting down, I would advise you still visit a health center, see your doctor, let them run the tests, and be sure that you are not at risk, you do not have diabetes before you proceed with taking such things. And with freshly squeezed juice, it's best to do it yourself, and please don't add sugar and don't add honey. Just squeeze the fruits and then take it.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, I think we can take a question from
John. Read the chat. Read the chat. People are sending their questions there.
No. Any question from any female or a lady on the platform, please? All right. Any question? All right, so let's go to the chat. This goes to both Dr. Serkan and Dr. Jacqueline. Somebody is asking, how are hypertension, diabetes, and kidney disease related?
I think we've
it's been answered.
Yeah, we've touched on it. For as long as you get hypertension,
That is the only question I see I can ask.
Yeah. So it's been tackled. For as long as you get hypertension, the chances of getting diabetes is very high. And for both conditions, one of the consequences or one of the end-stage things, the organs they target is kidneys. So once you have a hypertension or diabetes, it will target your kidneys. And the other thing is so interrelated that people with kidney disease too can be having hypertension. So you can have a hypertension and get kidney disease out of it, or you can have kidney disease and get hypertension out of it. So it's very related, if that answers the question.
Okay. I just want to add a little bit.
Diet.
Yeah, on diet, okay.
On diet, somebody is asking about the gluten-free rice. Will you recommend it?
The gluten-free rice. Sorry, I didn't get the question, Will.
Yeah, somebody wants to know if you will recommend gluten-free rice as part of the diet that I think that can have to reduce
So as I mentioned before,
chances of getting being diabetic.
Diabetic. Okay, thank you for the question. But as I mentioned before, we do not promote the fad diets. So the diets that tend to be specific for people with diabetes or people with, we tend not to promote that because sometimes people go overboard with it. For instance, they'll tell you this has no sugar, but it has low sugar or 10% of it. Once the thing is rice, it's going to have some amount of glucose in there, and that glucose is still going to break down into sugar in your blood, in your body. So sorry, it's going to have, I mean, rice is carbohydrates. So when you eat it, it's still going to become glucose. As to how high or how low that glycemic index is for gluten-free rice, we can't be too certain. So what we advise is eat your foods that we know, the natural ones, because what tends to happen is if the foods are altered, at the end of the day, something's taken out, something is replaced so that the taste can still be about the same. So we really don't promote foods made specifically targeting diabetic people. The best way out is reduce your portions, exercise. As for the exercise, we have to overemphasize it, like we really have to say it, because the best way forward is diet and exercise. So exercise, 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 and reduce your carbohydrates to the quantities that you need. And what you need will be specific to you. When it comes to diabetes and hypertension, we like to see the patients as individuals, because your struggles is not Mr. A's or Mrs. A's or Miss A's struggles. So when we see the patient, we assess the patient, we determine what other things may be going on with the patient. Then based on that, we can recommend strict certain diets. We will bring in the nutritionist who will lay out what you need to eat and what will help you best. So in terms of the fat diet, less sugar, less glycogen, we don't really recommend it.
Okay, well, doctor, thank you very much. I mean, we have 3 more questions and then probably we will ask you for your closing remarks. The first question is, I don't know. Well, somebody wants to know the effect of beer, like drinking of beer or intake of beer, the effect that it has on, how do you call it, hypertension and then diabetes. Like, do they really have any direct effect on an individual becoming hypertensive or being diabetic?
Well, thank you for your question. So remember, beer is made from hops. Hops is like it's one of the grains, like corn and maize and all those things. All that is still carbohydrates. And also alcohol itself tends to when alcohol is consumed in large quantity, whether beer or gin or whatever alcoholic beverage it is, they all tend to increase the glycemic processes, because alcohol, one, can injure the pancreas, and pancreas is the one that contains the beta cells that produces the insulin. So a high alcohol intake can cause pancreatitis, that's swelling or inflammation of the pancreas. So that's something to note. Then the beer is also made from hops, which are grains or carbs. And these carbs, when they enter your body, convert into sugars. Another thing is the people who consume alcoholic beverages in large quantities tend not to eat adequately. And what happens is the liver, which would have stored, the liver usually stores sugars. When you don't eat, the liver breaks down the stored sugars back into the blood and pumps it. So when they drink a lot of alcohol, they don't eat, the liver breaks down sugars, puts it in the blood, and puts them in a state of hyperglycemia. The hops from the beer is also high carbohydrate, breaking down into the blood as hyperglycemia. So at the end of the day, what the person is doing is promoting a lot of sugar in the blood. And the third thing is, like I said, alcohol can damage the pancreas. So those alcohol should be taken in ideal quantities of not more than a unit to 2 units a week. And the unit is like a bottle of Guinness or a bottle of beer. It shouldn't be taken in more than 1 or 2 units a week.
Okay.
I think we would have done ourselves
Thank you very much. Really
a
appreciate
lot of
that.
the service if we had not tackled alcohol. Guys are here. We forgive us for presenting these topics without talking about alcohol.
I have a question. Thank you for addressing it.
I mean, all right. People often say, "Oh, the guy died at the gym when he was working out because he had a heart attack." But through your presentation, this is somebody's question. Through your presentation, you said we need to work out. So through workout, others to get high, how do you call it, heart attack. What kind of cardio exercise would you recommend for
Working
somebody
out
who
doesn't mean
doesn't
good
necessarily
fit.
want to? Somebody who doesn't necessarily want to build muscles, but wants to improve on his cardio or burn excessive fat or unnecessary, how do you call it, some of these junks that we eat into our system. What kind of exercise would you recommend?
Okay, thank you for the question.
Both Dr. Kankam and Dr. Jackson.
Okay, thank you for the question. So in terms of exercise, considering our ages, it would be best to first consult your doctor to have a check to be sure that you are fit to exercise. Then for the exercises itself, for females our ages, anything from about 30 minutes cardio workout 3 times a week. With that should be done on alternate days. So for instance, if you exercise on Monday, you allow your muscles to rest on Tuesday. You exercise on Wednesday, you rest your muscles on Thursday, you exercise on Friday. For guys, they can do up to 5 days. So 30 minutes cardio workout 5 days a week. And the cardio workout usually would involve about 5 to 10 minutes of warm-up exercises, which is just stretches, a few walks, maybe a few jumps here and there if you were doing it with a trainer. And then you do a core 15 minutes, maybe little jog, quick walk, depending on what you are comfortable with. So you can break out into a sweat. And then you tone it down again towards the end, 5 to 10 minutes of stretches. So it's not like you're going and killing yourself, no. There are really good cardio workouts on YouTube for beginners. But again, it's best to consult with your doctors first, make sure you're fit for exercises, and then you can go on to a gym. You can go to a gym, talk to a personal trainer, and then they can put up something for you. Otherwise, you can go to YouTube. There are beginner cardio workouts that will let you break out into a sweat, but they are not too intense.
Okay, I've been prompted. We have a medical doctor on the line who wants to ask a question, and then we have an engineer. So we'll open the floor for these 2 individuals, and after no more questions. Go Steve, the floor is yours. Ask your question.
Okay, thanks. Good evening. Thanks to Dr. Kankam and Dr. Jacqueline. I was listening to you on the diabetes. How do you say? Talk. I'm very concerned with the alcohol because I have a bit of a background within the health sector. Now, for me, I know that
Masa kede pebo.
For me, I know that people with diabetes, one of and normally it's not supposed to go over. There's a bit of a noise on the background. Can you shut down those who are on? Sorry. Okay, so as I was saying, it is to my notion that people with diabetes 1 or 2 may not be able to go over 3 pints per day. However, one has to eat because it depends on whether you are either on insulin or you are on medications that are glucose suppressants. What is your view about that? Did you hear me?
Madam, you are muted, oh. Dr. Jacqueline, you are muted.
Sorry, I didn't hear the entire question.
If you don't understand him, it is normal. We don't understand him also.
So you made some statement whereby you said that people who are being diagnosed with diabetes are supposed to be taking in some certain number of units of alcohol within a week. But I have a different notion because I am privy to some of these issues because I'm in the health industry. Now, what I'm saying is that, to my notion, it is on the higher side, or it's not advantageous for people to go about 3 pints now. That's 3 pints a day. Now, 3 pints is normally 3 bottles a day, okay? But from what you are saying a pint or a unit, which is a bottle a week.
Go
So
stay a crown gallon.
it's a bit of difficult challenge for some people. Now, when you go on the other side of the food intake, hydrates, when you come to mashed potatoes and everything, I think that it'll be far impossible for some of us to taken those small quantities of mashed potatoes or slices of yams or any other meal that you want to think about. Is it not the case that a balanced, healthy lifestyle is rather more important than the limitations of food quantities that we are supposed to be eating?
Well, thank you so much for your question. Like I said, I cannot overemphasize on the diet and exercise, stressing a lot on the exercise, but the reality on the ground from what we see in practice is that most diabetics are not ready to change anything. They are not ready to exercise. So what we tend to do is we tend to advise them on dietary modifications. Sometimes they are more willing to do the dietary modifications, but they are not willing to do the exercise portion. At the end of the day, like I said earlier, we treat every patient as individuals. So it's all dependent on the if someone is diagnosed with diabetes, it's dependent on the person's glycemic control and whether they are compliant and whether or not they are, like I said, their sugars are well controlled. So if it's not well controlled at all, then the least triggers, the better. So with someone who's not well controlled at all, we're going to ask them to try and be strict about, and at the end of the day, the patient has every right to decide what they want. We counsel them on what's best for them, and we give them all the options, but they, at the end of the day, have to take up the decision along with us, because we are not the ones going, it's their body at the end of the day. So the recommended alcohol intake is 1 to 2 units a week.
Thank you.
However, if the person was doing, say, 15 units a week, and now you're asking them to cut down, it's easier for them to cut down gradually. But at the end of the day, we have to tell them what is recommended so that they know what would help them to be at their best glycemic control. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Isaiah, you are muted. You are the moderator.
I said, Doctor, it answers it all. I mean, that is an insightful discussion. I mean, on alcohol intake when you're diabetic and then you have this kind of hypertension problem. Dr. Lawrence Hasford, please go ahead. Go ahead with your question, then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Stonka. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. So, doctors Jacqueline and doctors Dr. Kankam, thank you very much for very insightful and very educative presentation. Very fantastic delivery so far. There's another aspect of hypertension and diabetes that, as an obstetrician, I think I need to bring to the fore. It has to do with hypertensive disease in pregnancy and also diabetes in pregnancy. I think it's something that's probably it escaped you one way or the other. Since we have a lot of ladies on the platform, and even with the guys, of course, most of them have wives, girlfriends, side chicks, etc. So I need to mention that there's an aspect of hypertension which occurs mainly in pregnancy, and there's also what we call gestational diabetes also in pregnancy. And then the dynamics in pregnancy may be slightly different from when it's just hypertension or diabetes out of pregnancy. In that, in this kind of condition, especially with the hypertensive disease in pregnancy, it comes with very dire complications, which may even lead to very life-threatening conditions that may affect the woman and the baby. And then sometimes it may go a long way into leading to multiple organ disorders, etc., etc. It's quite an extensive discussion. I mean, I don't think we need to go into detail, but just to educate all of us on the platform that there is hypertension in pregnancy and there's also diabetes in pregnancy, which may have it.
What happened?
May lead be lifelong. And in fact, an idea about so that if you have a wife, a sister, a side chick, a girlfriend, or anybody like that who probably presents with hypertension or diabetes in pregnancy, I think the take-home message will be that such an individual needs to see a specialist as soon as possible for optimum care so that it may not lead to any diverse or end organ damage or even death. So that is what I want to contribute. But so far, I think the conversation or the discussion is going very well. Thank you very much, Drs. Kankam and Dr. Jacqueline.
Dr. Asford,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I think it's a very important part that we are going to miss too. It's good that he brought it up. And what I want to add to it is if you are diabetic or you are hypertensive, even if it's controlled and you get pregnant, your drugs may have to be changed. Your drugs may have to even be adjusted. So immediately you realize that you are pregnant and you are hypertensive, you are diabetic, you see the doctor and get your drugs either changed or adjusted. Sometimes it may be maintained, but as much as possible, try immediately you get pregnant, you try and get to see the doctor. So that's all. Thank you very much.
And another thing I would also want to add, first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Hasford. Really appreciate it. Yes, it would have been wrong on our side not to mention it. Once a lady is above 35 years old, if she wants to conceive, it would be best to see the obstetrician gynecologist as soon as possible, because first of all, above 35 will be high risk. And secondly, they are prone to having gestational diabetes or gestational or hypertension in pregnancy. And also, if someone is already pregnant and is told that they have any of these, it's important to note that their life could be at risk. The baby's life could also be at risk. And even the baby, after the baby's born, the infant's life could also be at risk, because even after being born, a baby born to a gestational diabetes mother can end up with jaundice, or they can end up with a hypoglycemic episode where they would have to be kept in a NICU facility. And also the baby could die in the womb if the mother's sugars are not controlled while pregnant. So once that crops up, it's a high risk pregnancy. Make sure you see a specialist and do what they tell you to do, as in comply with what you are asked to do to maximize the chances of survival. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, for comporting yourself, especially your Gasco boys. Thank you very much for behaving. I know Holy Child, they are ladies. Yeah. Yeah,
John,
you school that.
let me interrupt you there.
Anyway.
John, please ask about coffee and green tea intake. Yeah.
So no more questions. No more questions.
Oh, a quick question. Coffee and green tea.
Who need to go home? Hey, number some crying.
Our first
no more questions.
Questions pure.
Questions pure, but we have time. We are working with time, guys. We said 3:30. Most of you join at 3:50. You cannot blame. You
said what? 3:30?
Your question.
7:30 or 3:30?
Yeah, you cannot. In Portugal,
answer us coffee and green tea intake. Yeah, anything about
that? Coffee is known to increase your increase your BP. So the other thing about coffee is that if it keeps you awake, and for as long as you are awake for periods when you are supposed to be asleep, your BP could go up. So. And once you are getting hypertension, of course, your diabetes could also just join in.
And also, coffee is known to cause diuresis. That's excessive urination, and that could also end up not being too good. I mean, if you end up dehydrated, it's a whole cascade of events.
Not being too good at what? Not being too good at what?
As in, coffee can cause diuresis, cause excessive urination, it can lead to dehydration if the fluid is not replenished, and eventually results in renal damage, or, well, it could happen. And also, coffee in excess can cause the heart rate to go very high. It can even lead to arrhythmias. So it can, I mean, in simple English, it can cause the heart to beat faster. It can lead to the heart not beating the way it should. And it can end up causing heart problems. Yeah.
Okay. All right. As I said, I would like to say this. This is a common platform that we have found ourselves on. Husbands and wives, sides, and whatever. Please, let's pass on this information to whoever that we are in a relationship with. Your husband, your wife, your side chick, your boyfriend, whatever. We need to save lives. This knowledge, you're not going to get it for free, only on this platform. So please, Dr. Kankam, Dr. Jacqueline, whoever that is a medical officer, a specialist on this platform, please, you can put your information out there. We'll give it to our members, and then we will begin the consultation processes with you. We don't have to go to a different place when we are familiar with people on this platform. So please, I've seen many doctors from the other side. We have doctors on our side too. Let's share information, and then we can at least save a soul from Augusto. What's it? Can save a soul from either Augusto. Guys, we are still, meeting is still in progress. I mean, let's mute our mics, and then on behalf of the president and the entire APSU group, we would like to say a very big thank you to all HOPSAs who joined us. Who's that? Apostle, come on. We thank you very much for being on board and then helping us celebrate our 20th anniversary. We appreciate you very much. Please, anytime that you feel like inviting us to join you in any celebration, extend a hand to us. We shall grace your occasion. At this time, I think I'll turn over the program to the president for him to give out his closing remarks. So, Renel.
Yes, I am here. Hello, good evening. John, look, thank you so much for volunteering to moderate this session. In fact, even before I go ahead, can I please ask, I haven't heard Barbara's voice today. So the HOPSA president for 2001 year group, if we can.
If you can what?
Hey, Apostle, come on, Apostle.
If we can see you.
Oh,
that would be nice.
It's not me.
Oh, okay, that's a problem. That's fine. But I just wanted to acknowledge you as well. Now,
thank you very much for the acknowledgement.
Right, guys. Okay, guys. So thank you all so much for making time for this. I'd like to say a big thank you to Dr. Jacqueline.
Yes,
right? I got it right?
Yes, and yes.
So
yeah, my Jackie. That's my Jackie.
Just to say a big thank you to you for your wonderful submissions, and I think right from scratch you've been really involved in the whole process. So just to say that we really appreciate that. To Dr. Kankam,
thank you.
For those who are watching, you would see that he is in his doctor's robe. Is it? Doc, is that how you call it? That's
scrubs, yeah.
What?
Scrub. We call it
scrubs.
Scrub. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's in the.
You have to be on the health field, please.
Did you say scrub? Yeah.
Guys, please mute everyone. Let's quickly do this. Yeah. So Dr. Kankam, also like to say a big thank you to you. I think we contacted you. This was just about 3 or 4 days ago. Just before the process came out, we did not hesitate. Like I was saying earlier, you're at work, but you just told us that you would make time for this, and we're glad that you did. So we really appreciate that, and I would like to say that. Now, there are a couple of points, Barbara, good to see you. There are a couple of points that I just wanted to put out there. This is the first of such a session that we've had. First of all, to everybody who made time for this, guys, thank you so much. I think at a point in time I saw about 72 or so people on the call, which is quite encouraging. I was literally hoping that we'll be able to hit 50. So hitting 70 that is really good. It just tells me that people are interested in this, and we will look at how we can improve the process and improve essentially the content that we gather and put out there. A couple of questions were submitted. I realized that not all the questions, the moderator didn't get a chance to go through all the questions. What I can say is that once this is the first of its kind, we are learning from it. We're going to get better. So hopefully with subsequent sessions, we'll find a way of going through it such that either the moderator is able to get the panelists to keep to a certain time frame so that we'll have more time for questions, right? And then we can address everything that comes up. But at least for this, what I can also add to it is that we'll just collate all the questions that have come in, and then we'll share it with our resource persons so that they can provide the feedback, and then we can share with you. And I'm sure the resource persons will also provide their, okay, well, I mean, for the APSUnians, you all know who Dr. Kankam is. For the HOPSAs, you all know who Dr. Ezan is. So, I mean, if you need to take any further feedback, I'm sure you know how to contact them. That should not really be a big deal. The final thing really is that we received some feedback from some of our guests about interruptions that we experienced whilst the session was going on. These were unwarranted interruptions. And as APSUnians, this is, sort of normal. We do this all the time. We have this boys interactions, but once we have an open forum like this, that is a bit more organized, we have guests coming in from outside. It's not just us as APSUnians. So sometimes we just need to give a bit of, I don't want to use a certain word that would seem, but we just need to recognize that we are not the only ones on the call. So
you have to behave like Butcher Boy small.
I beg you. So I'm just begging you that in subsequent sessions that you kindly respect the fact that there are other people on the call. If you join the call, please just mute your mic, and then let's all listen in. When it's time for questions, after the questions in the chat are read, you'll be given an opportunity once you raise your hand to ask your question. But on that note, I guess, look, thank you all once again. Barbara, I don't know if you want to put in a final word before we call it a night.
I think you've said everything, so I'll just join you to say thank you to everybody who was able to make it on the call. We are very grateful. We don't take your time and your participation for granted. Thank you also very much to Dr. Jacqueline and Dr. Kankam. We are very grateful that when we called on you, you graciously accepted to do this for us. So thank you.
Thank you too. And thank you for having us.
Okay.